Fire Radio.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to this is a very special episode here of the Size Up by National Fire Radio. I'm not even gonna call this an episode. This is gonna be a series, I guess, a short series. Well, no, each of these episodes in this series is gonna be short, and it's gonna be called. I guess I need to name this. I should have thought of this before, but it's gonna be Chats with Russ. So if you're watching on YouTube, you already obviously see I'm sitting in my father's kitchen right now, not in the normal studio. But so many people have been after me to spend some time talking with my best friend and mentor. And I would say the reason I have the gift of gab, let's just say, my dad, Russ. So whether you want to call him Russ, Dad, Poppy, Uncle Russ, or if he was in trouble with my mother, Godfather, kiss the ring. If he was in trouble with my mother, Russell was always how you knew, he was in trouble when she said Russell, right? Is that
That's
pretty
right,
good,
yeah.
right? So, yeah, Dad, welcome to the Size Up, man. I'm like 110 episodes into this show, and it's the first time you're
It's
here.
about time you got me. I was wondering what you were waiting for.
You know what I was waiting for, right? I am in fear. Listen, I do have the editing power, so I can edit out anything Russ says that I don't want you guys to hear. But, I think it's because of the editing, right?
Okay.
Sound good?
That sounds good.
So I've been trying to think, what am I going to talk to you about today? Because we spend a large amount of time together, I would say, right?
Oh, definitely growing up, sure.
I mean, recently, growing up. Growing up, you were my dad. I needed to spend time with you.
I moved close to you because you said you wanted to spend time with me.
So you painted me a good picture. He moved close to me because I said I'm not driving this far anymore when I got to take care of you and my mother at the time. But we do spend a lot of time together, and I think one of the things that is interesting about our relationship, and maybe this happens to a lot of parent-child relationships, but for all those years, being your favorite son, your favorite
Watch what you
child.
say there, I got two other children.
They don't count. But you took care of me, right? And you raised me in a way that I saw that. And it wasn't that you were at home every day because you were at the firehouse, you were at the garage, but you always made sure that we were taken care of as a family. And that was instilled in me through your actions. So now that, you're a little older, I like to be able to do that for you as much as it is complicated. What do you think about all that?
It does get complicated at times because, I don't always agree with what you want me to do. And, it's well known that I don't like to listen. And you got me tracked wherever I go. But I know it's okay. A lot of people don't care what their parents do. But you have a true caring for me, and it means a lot to me.
And I think too, though, but again, I learned that from you and mommy, right? And listen, I wasn't a perfect son by any way, shape, or form. My parents' marriage, you learn, I feel like you learn when you get married and have a spouse. You see a lot of things in your parents' relationship that you're like, whoa, that's what they were talking about that time. Or, maybe it wasn't there, but it was in that kind of like, you showing me that. And it's what I'm trying to teach the boys. And I really hope they see our relationship now. And listen, Russ is good. Wait, we just decided. Not decided. We just figured it out. You're going to be 87 in 2 weeks, right? That when I'm 87, these guys are still here taking care of me because we do have a good time together, I'd say, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I enjoy the children more than I enjoy you, to tell you the truth. That's what I get my charge out of. I had my enjoyment with you already. We did what we had to do. Tell you a little story about Robbie. I used to take him out for Halloween. So he got to be about 11 or 12 years old. And we're going out for Halloween. And he says, Daddy, I don't want to go to all of the houses that we go to. Why don't we just go to the heavy hitters, Uncle Charlie, Aunt Rosie, Gumbada? I said, well, why do you want to go there? He says, they give me cash. I like the cash. So he got that term, a heavy hitter, off of me.
So yes, it's a very true story.
Another.
Wait, I was not 11. I was like 7 or 8
Oh,
there.
7 or 8.
And
Well,
we can't make this the Robbie kid story time. There'll be plenty of time for a lot of stories, right?
and then Robbie got to be about 18,
We're
and
going.
God bless my mother. When she passed away, she made a will, and she didn't have a lot of money. But in the will, she stipulated that each of the grandchildren will get a few $1,000s, and any grandchildren born thereafter the will, they would get it. So Robbie got to be about 18 or 19, and my wife and I discussed it, and we said, "Well, he's old enough now, let's give him the money." So we give him the money, and he says, "Wow." So he figured out when he was born. He was born in October of 77.
78.
78, I'm sorry. My mother died in August of 79. So when I gave him the money, he figured it out. He says, "Gosh, Dad, I come right in under the wire, didn't I?"
What did Grandma say about me when I was born? It's one of my favorite stories of Russ's. What did I have on my face?
He has the stamp of you.
No, well, you, but something else too is what the story always was. The stamp of. Sometimes I gotta help with the stories. The stamp of Italy on his face is what I was always told
Yeah.
it was, not you.
Oh, yeah. No, but my aunt from Italy, my mother said he had the stamp of Italy because out of my children, he was the only one that looked like me.
This
The
is
other
true.
ones look Polish, they have blonde hair and light skinned. And this guy was dark like a Sicilian,
Right out of Sicily
right
there,
out of
but
Sicily.
all right, so and obviously you could tell not many people probably in the podcast, my podcasting audience knows this, but when I was younger, everyone called me Robbie. And then that kind of changed to Rob a little bit. And for anyone ever really wondering, Pip started in high school. From my first freshman year algebra teacher, Brother Francis Chinnery, I'll never forget. He taught my brother, and we went to the same high school just many years apart. And he was like, I called your brother Pip, and I'm going to call you Pip. And it just kind of stuck from there throughout high school. And but there are still people, even at work, that call me Robbie because they knew me when he was on the job and I was the little brat running around the firehouse wanting to go on all the fire engines. But it's one of the things that, I've said it on a few episodes and now I get to say it with him sitting next to me. But had this guy not decided in 1967,
65.
65 to become a firefighter, who knows anything? You never know what anything's going to
Well,
happen.
that's an interesting topic right there.
I figured as much.
Uh,
That's why I led you into it, Chad.
a lot of kids when they go to school, they have no direction on what they want to do. You ask them what you want to do. Oh, I don't know. And it's basically the same today. When I was 12 years old, my mother had to get me off the street because I was kind of mischievous. So she asked this here very good friend of ours, he had a garage, if I can go there and sweep the floor after school. So I did that. And little did she know, this guy was teaching me all the wrong things. He was teaching me how to gamble. I used to set the card games up for on a Friday and Saturday night. My mother never knew none of this, right? But I ended up okay anyway. I forgot where I was going to go with this now.
Well, we were getting into kids' direction, but before we get into that, I'll remind you where it
Oh,
is
yeah.
at. Remember, too, we're talking about my father was born in 1938, so we're talking about New Jersey 1950. Although my grandmother, my father's mother, was born in America, she went back to Sicily, and that's where she met my grandfather.
No, she met my grandfather
Uh,
in America.
All right, so I got the story wrong. He'll
Yeah.
he'll correct me and when I'm wrong for sure. But even though they lived in New Brunswick, New Jersey, they spoke little English. Let's say
Yeah.
it's a good way to put it because when you think about immigration, especially hot topic. I told you no religion, no politics,
Yeah.
anything like that. But way back when all the Italians stayed with the Italians, all the Irish stayed with the Irish, all the Polish kind of stayed with the Polish. And of course, there was intermingling of their kids, my father's generation, but my grandparents didn't necessarily need to be able to speak English because they spoke Italian or better than Italian is Sicilian, because we're the best Italians being from
You're right.
Sicily. Plain and simple there. So, when my father was growing up, his parents didn't necessarily have the best communication skills with the school or teachers and things like that. So my father and his older brother, my uncle Charlie, they were their communicators. So by my dad saying, working at that garage didn't really, he wasn't learning all the right things. He still was learning things. He was learning a trade because he first became an auto mechanic after high school. And he was kind of learning business and life skills that maybe you aren't getting at home, right?
Yeah,
Not all the best life skills,
yeah.
but hey, I mean, there's really nothing wrong with setting up a card game every now and again. As long as everybody playing wants to play, right? I mean, you can
Yeah,
set up a card game, right? But you were saying about direction. I know if you were gonna kind of flip that towards me, but eventually, you started as an auto mechanic,
right.
and my parents met when they were in high school, but that auto mechanic job just wasn't enough, or you didn't see a future in it,
Well, what happened was, in the auto business, you can make a good living, uh, but you're not going to make a really good living with a pension. We were on our honeymoon and driving back from Florida. I says to my wife, I think I'm going to try and get on the police department or the fire department. Back then, all you had to do was know somebody, and it was all political. I got put on a job. I never had a physical. I never took a test. I never did anything. We took all of this stuff after we got the job. So we couldn't feel anything. We had to pass everything automatically. I passed the physical, walked in the doctor's office and walked out. That was the physical. He looked at me, he says, "You look good." And that's basically the way it was. We went to work the first night. We were on the back of a rig going to a fire. No training. No training. And I went on with a Spanish fellow from Puerto Rico, Freddie Colon. He could hardly speak English. So I had to teach him, and I didn't know anything myself. 2 weeks on the job, our first call was an ambulance call, 1 o'clock in the morning, up on Oliver Avenue on the outskirts of New Brunswick. Walk up the steps, there's a lady standing in the kitchen doorway with another lady holding a baby. Actually standing up, she had the baby. We didn't know what to do. We had to call the ambulance driver. He was dispatching. The dispatcher was on vacation. So he came up with the chief's car and he taught us how to cut a cord on the job training. I
Now,
was I was a godfather a couple of times, and I don't know how many miscarriages we had. I stopped counting them.
so okay, now I'll break the story down into into more today's, even though that's it. What he was saying about that call was that was the first time he was on the ambulance. So in an interesting, just the way things go, when my father was on the job in New Brunswick, the fire department was running the ambulance at the time. And that's where all the new people would go. This is before EMT, eight
Yeah,
point stars. There was no training,
yeah, we had first aid. That was it.
basic first aid, right? And that eventually evolved into the 70s in New Jersey, with paramedics, and then
EMTs.
EMTs and paramedics. And then the ambulance actually left my fire department and went to the third party hospital service, which
No, first I went to Guaranteed Motors.
went to a tow company
Went
first.
to a tow company. They had a problem on New Year's Eve where somebody in the Edgebrook section passed away because there was no ambulance service that night. So now the city wants us to take it over again, and a lot of the guys didn't want it because you got a lot of calls that weren't even emergencies. We were like a transport service. So the city hired the EMTs that Guaranteed Motors had to come and work in the firehouse. And about 3 or 4 years later, then Robert Wood took it over.
So it's interesting, right? Because today, what do
There,
we hear about an ambulance service, right? What do we hear? The ambulance is the glorified taxi. We're talking about the 60s and 70s where we still had the same problems.
yeah,
And it's almost like, and I know he's going to be in one of these, Jeremy's going to come down now that he actually sees this. But these are the things that we try to talk about on Jeremy's show a lot. And Mickey, probably the three of us all talk about this, but how the past, it's all the same, right? We say the same things, just the skills and things have changed. And to go back to what Russ was saying too about coming on the job, nobody wanted to be on the ambulance. So they put the new guys on the ambulance. And that's where him and Freddie Colon were. Freddie Colon was the first Hispanic person hired in the fire department. He came on with my dad. And just, everybody out there listening, but how this is a generational job. His grandson was actually, when I just became a lieutenant, his grandson just came on the job and was one of the first probationary firefighters assigned to me. So it's that cool little thing that with the traditions of this and family members. I work with several family members now whose fathers or uncles or grandfathers
Fathers.
even worked with my father. And vice versa, they were higher than me on the job, and now some are coming in even lower than me on the job. And it's something that we have to appreciate. And Russ has done a great job of still showing up. And even before I got hired, he retired um,
92.
in 92. So that would be 12 years before I got hired. But in those 12 years, he still stayed really connected with the firefighters that worked for you there,
Yeah.
I'd say, right? In a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
way. Your guys that we don't need to say their names, but they
I'm
were called
still friends
and
with
still
him.
friends with them. They were called his nephews, right? Because we're talking about the old days where nepotism was the rule, let's say, and the standard of it all. Although I do think, uniquely enough, my father has a lot of nephews that worked on the job. I think as a leader, you never treated anyone differently. Even though you had people that were closer to you than others, everyone had that opportunity. And it's very hard to see that from the outside, right?
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that you played favorites all those years. And maybe he did in some
I might have on a
situations.
couple of people,
In some but
yeah.
it's not even people though, Dad. I think what it is it's the situation, right? Because there were times too that I know for a fact where you had to come down on those same people, right? You had to
Yeah.
keep it fair and across the board. And it's a huge leadership vacuum that we're seeing lost now. Where, listen, if you mess up, somebody's got to come down on you, whether they're your friend or not. And I think you've had both those experiences, right?
Definitely. But I had all good people surrounding me. I was, when I became an officer, there were a lot of guys with seniority over me. And it's hard going to work when you got a guy with 20 some years on the job and he's still a firefighter and he's working under you, and you got to tell him what to do. So I found that kind of difficult. So I sort of let them run the show, and I knew they knew what to do. I didn't have to tell them what to do. They already knew what to do. I had Angelo Biondo. He was probably one of the best firemen around. He just didn't want to be an officer. A lot of people just didn't want it. Uh, and I probably would have been satisfied the way I was, but all my friends were getting promoted. And my children says to me, Dad, you tell me that I got to go to school and I got to do good. And here you are, you don't even want to get promoted. So they motivated me to get promoted. And I came out number one on the test. And a lot of people couldn't believe it. A lot of people said I used an orange pen. Well, if that's what they wanted to believe, that was okay with me too. So
The
that
orange
story
pen.
still goes around. I used an orange pen, but I did pretty good with that orange pen.
Just to clarify too, these were my evil siblings. This was before I made my appearance into the world here. So my evil siblings were the ones that told my father that they were challenging him to do better, I guess. But it was a great thing that they
Yeah,
did that, right?
yeah.
And
I
it's
can't. I know. I'm happy they did. I'm trying to teach them to advance themselves, and here I am. I'm just laying back. I was doing mechanic work. I was making money. I didn't care about being an officer. I said, "Well, what do I need that headache for?"
oh my God, is
And
it headache?
but it was a good thing.
He left the headache part when he told me I should try to get promoted. He left all that kind of stuff out, like about the headaches that you get and when you wear the white shirt and the one thing that I like to say about when I act as a deputy is no matter what, whenever the phone rings, it's for you, and there's always a problem
Problem.
that you have to solve some way or another. He left all that part out of it. But it's interesting too when you go back to like the direction and things because when I was super young, all I wanted to be was a firefighter. I loved
Uh,
every minute of everything that he did. But then as I got into my like tween years and teenage years, I wasn't necessarily looking at this as an option. And I had to kind of circle back into it when I was trying to figure out, towards that end of high school, what I wanted to do. But had it not been for him, there'd be no size up, there'd be no 555 pip, there would be none of that stuff because I probably would have never even looked at this as a career.
Could have been a doctor. Who knows?
I doubt I would have been a doctor as much as
An accountant,
none of those things were for me.
a jockey.
A jockey could have worked. A jockey could have. See, this is what I listened to this from my dad. It's not just all of you, but we did have an uncle that was really a great uncle. Was really into horse racing.
Yeah, he was crooked.
And I was very short my entire life. And he had always said, like, we're going to make you a jockey. Now, come to find out, I'm actually too big to be a jockey.
Yeah.
I'll have you all know out there, I'm definitely too tall to be a jockey. But, those are the kind of things that we get to look back on and laugh about. And even the connection with the job, when I got hired, Russ started showing up even more, especially on the days I was working, checking in on me. At the time, a lot of the guys on my shift actually worked on the job when he was there. We actually just had our last member retire this past year, that would have worked there when my father was there. But he's shown enough face around that even the rookiest of rookies on the other shifts know exactly who he is when he walks in the door. He may not know them, but they definitely know who Director Paparo is. But that's because he's stayed relevant, not just because of me. Definitely my connection is there.
Oh yeah.
I mean, my shift is he's at the kitchen table like it's his shift running it, essentially. Right? I
Yeah.
would say. And now with your nephew getting promoted and transferred, you go to your old shift and
My
you're
old
going to be
shift.
running that deal too, right? Because he still has nephews on the job that are no way blood related to me.
No, I got about 3 or 4 of them.
So it's an important part of what I love about our time together. And I think as we get these conversations going, we there's definitely some stories because he can spin a yarn if you haven't noticed that by now. Right? Where do you
Yeah.
think you got that from? Because I know I got my gift of storytelling from you. You think you got it from maybe like Aunt Lucy in the store or
I don't know. My mother, she was like an Ann Landers of the Italian community. I mean, she went to school when she was in Italy. She came here when she was 19, so she could read and write Italian. And back then, the people that came from Italy, they didn't have the opportunity to go to night school like we have now or day schools. They couldn't read or write Italian. They couldn't read or write English. So my mother would read the letters, so she knew everybody's business. And then she would answer the letters for them. So I always called her the Ann Landers of the Italian community in the Second Ward.
which when you think about these days, like she could have been writing anything back to these people.
Yeah.
She was making up her own stories sometimes, probably.
Yeah, probably. And she learned how to read and write by doing our homework with us and speak English. She used to read, see Dick run, look at Jane walk, and that little Dick and Jane book and stuff. And that's how she learned to read and write English. She could, she wasn't a story writer, but she knew enough to write a letter, and which was good.
Yeah, I mean, and it's great that he still tells these stories. And now that we're getting into this and we're talking, and I'm already thinking, like I said, like we'll get Jeremy here with us one day. We are gonna go one day and get my uncle, his older brother, my uncle Charlie.
Oh,
Because you want to talk about a guy that can
stories.
talk. That's not gonna be like a 25-minute episode. That's gonna be like a forever episode because those guys can talk. But I think this is gonna be kind of fun. And you told kind of an ambulance story and you're getting on the job story, but I just had an incident where I was on the car, that we had a call that my father has told me about, that when they used to write reports way back in the day, before computers and before the legal system and fire investigators and things, that this is the first time he ever said it was someone else that did it this way. He used to tell me it was him that said this, and I always told him, I'm like, Dad, I've been on the job for a long time now, and I've never had this occur. ever. And it just happened like 2 shifts ago. So when you would have a fire, or that chief that you spoke about would have a fire, regardless of anything, he always had one cause he went to. What was his causation?
Smoking. Smoking in bed, smoking in the chair. It was always careless smoking.
Careless smoking was the go-to for all these
We
reports.
didn't need no fire inspectors. And then, and then the less you wrote on a report, the better it was.
Exactly. Nothing like the way it
You
is
did it
now.
on an index card.
An index card?
An index card.
The whole thing.
Yeah, but not the small index card, not the 3x6. We did it like on a 6x8 index card. You know, it was
Yeah, bigger one. But then
bigger one.
what did they go into? Like a file?
And then they went into a file. They went into a file and they went into the back room.
And we still keep stuff in the back room, just not that for
And then so many years later, we clean them out,
Oh, and just throw them away?
throw them away.
Oh, jeez. Oh, my God. But that's again, it's
Yeah, that was my job a couple of times. Go clean the back room out.
go destroy the legal
So I'm
documents.
cleaning the back room out, and there was some good stuff back there. We had a chart with all the alarm boxes in New Brunswick. It was back in the 30s, and it was probably that chart that I have, 50 boxes. I put it in a frame for you,
Oh, how many boxes were in
Yeah.
there? Yeah, I'll put a picture of it
and
for this one. It's a
Yeah.
cool piece of history.
and some of them were really bad because they were from the 30s, and you know how paper gets, it gets all brown and stuff. So I kept all the good ones, and I gave them to guys. Guys, a lot of the guys wanted them, and I had a couple framed. And when one of my friends got promoted, I would give it to him as a gift. Just like now, I give some of my friends helmets.
Not that were found in the back room though, because
They weren't found in the back
those
room.
are long gone. But it's a pretty cool piece of New Brunswick fire history. One of them hangs in our museum, which we don't have right now, but I have one at my house, so I'll throw a quick picture up of that. And I think, we're kind of getting to that part now where, I said we'd keep these a little bit shorter than
Shorter,
my normal
yeah.
episode, so we can do a lot of them if you want to come back on. You wanna
Yeah,
come back on.
sure.
If you have any questions for Russ,
Write them down.
write them down.
If
Yes.
it was done in a firehouse, I did it.
Easy now there. Easy. You can't put out every fire
I
movie
know.
by looking at him, Dad. But he did do a lot of cool things.
Hey.
So instead of, wait, you're done now.
I
You're
got-
done.
no, I got
We're
one-
wrapping up.
one-
We're wrapping
one more
up.
thing,
This
one
is
more
my
thing.
headache. This is my headache.
I had a pickup truck and needed a paint job. So I went and bought a gallon of paint on a Saturday afternoon. I'm a firefighter now. I'm not an officer or nothing. We had about 7 guys. We didn't wash the truck. We had a couple with towels wiping the dirt off of it, and we're painting it with a brush. One of the firemen pull up. He had a 50 Chevy. Paint was faded on it. He says, "What are you doing?" "Oh, we're painting the truck." He says, "Oh, my car can use a paint job. Could you paint it?" Now, this guy became fire director in the 80s. In fact, I helped
Fire
get him
chief.
the job.
Fire chief.
A fire chief.
was the
Yeah, we
last
had
fire
chiefs back then. So he pulls up, goes across the street to the store. He had bacon, eggs, and a coffee. By the time he finished, we had his car painted. So he says, "Wow, it looks nice. You think I can drive it home?" "Well, it's not really dry right now, but if you put it in the wind, it'll dry a little bit." He took off and drove away with it.
They painted the car with a brush and rollers and like house paint essentially because it was okay for his beater pickup truck, but this guy had a real car. And they said he wanted a paint job. They gave him a paint job. Welcome to the New Brunswick
That's
Fire
fire
Department
department.
of the early 1970s, and there will be way more great stories like that. And if you do have any questions for Russ or anything you want to know, drop them in the comments below, and we can address them on a later date.
Okay.
Or I may have the answer, but he'll probably correct me. But as I always do, I want to thank you guys for listening. This has been a really special little quick episode here that I get to do with my dad. And I definitely want to do more of them because this is a lot of fun. And it's great to hear that history. I know a lot of guys on the job listen on my job too. So even hearing these stories again, it just kind of always makes you laugh. And it's a good time. So for the Size Up by National Fire Radio, this is Pip with my dad, Big Russ. saying, as we always do, what you do off the job matters.
National Fire Radio.